Greetings, vloggers, followers, and potters. It's another week here, and Dustin's here with you. And that's another week. It's been a good week. We practiced some self-care the last few days, and I was refreshed yesterday and able to go back to work with a refreshed set of mind. And I guess through the course of those couple of days of practicing self-care and getting my mental health online, in line with my brain and understanding and how everything works, I kind of figured out like the why and the how of things of life, especially more of what is towards a negative connotation and what, sets how things are set for me in, in a negative connotation and my negative self-talk. Um, my negative self-talk and my negative self-pity and just those things that really get me into those really, really dark places. And it's not, that I don't want to hide those. And yeah, those things do happen, but they get really, really negative, and I take them out mostly on trusted people, people who I think will sympathize with me or may think, oh, that's just him being him, or that, he's just, he could, it's like I feel I have this sense of safety with these people, with these select few people on my support team, my family, that I always feel like that they'll sympathize with me, and always think they'll sympathize with me and think that they'll make me think, oh, you're just feeling that way. But you keep playing that game for so long, and it just gets irritating, I feel, in my part, that you feel like you keep doing it over and over and over, and then it gets to the point where it's just not recognizable anymore, and it's not doing you any good mentally, and you just keep thinking, you think these things, and a lot of time when you're thinking these things, they're not true. They're not really valid. And that's a lot of what, I'm ex was exper have I experience at times. And it is a part of autism, from what I've learned, that, there are thoughts, and they're called, that could be, just pervasions or whatever. But I think the fact is that, sometimes these thoughts get there and they ruminate because they're so negative, or they are so challenging for me they were, or maybe they were then. And as an autistic person, they made me feel uncomfortable, or not at ease, where I felt like I didn't have control of a situation. Um, Obviously, a lot of those things that I thought of and still do at times think of, um, no longer exist. And I had to learn that. I had to realize that they no longer exist. These thoughts that I'm thinking sometimes, they're not valid anymore. They don't exist. And I think part of that is, maybe some PTSD, maybe some trauma. I don't know if it's technically diagnosed that, but what I'm experiencing, these thoughts and these scripts that come out, that what I'm experiencing is 90% of them are not valid. And in reality, I have a good life and truly blessed for that. And I have everything's well taken care of. I'm doing really well, but there's always parts in my brain that think these things. And they can be very damaging at times. But, I know to never act on them. And I know, it's like you have to wear a have to artistically mask some things of what you're really feeling or doing. And you're not really, not to say these things to people who think things of you and care of you. And we'll get into that in a moment here. But I think sometimes when you take it out on those that love you, or your safe person, so to say, it gets deteriorating, not only to you as an autistic person, but the person that you are attached to a lot. And you know, it's not true and it's not valid. But in that mindset, in that moment, you just feel like lashing those words out because it's not finding a healthier way to manage them at that moment, or you think, oh, they'll sympathize with me, or they'll understand, or they'll accept it. But when it's becoming to a point that it's being unhealthy and it's not getting you anywhere after so long that it's not getting you anywhere, it can be quite challenging to, keep fighting the fight that doesn't seem to end, and you're not realizing how, things are in that retrospect. You know, these thoughts that you have about things, and they're not true, and 90% of them are not true. And part of being autistic is the fact that these turn into scripts that are very negative in nature, and they're not really useful, but in your private life, or my private life, in my instance, I say them and they don't really have any value now. But I just, it's like something that you don't like about yourself, but it's part of the autism and it's part of being autistic. So you live with it, but it's not true. And that's the hard part of understanding. And I think it does a lot of, you have to work how to manage those emotions and recognizing those emotions and those responses, especially when it comes to anxiety, because they are these flawed thoughts and they turn into these responses that are very negative in nature, and they're just your body telling you that you have to get out of a situation that you are in. And it kind of segues in a way, because one of the biggest negative thoughts was when I was starting to use the paratransit system about 4 months ago, I say 3 months ago. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be, and when I was told that, and I had a lot of negative connotation about it in the past. And when I was told that this would be happening, I was on my brain jumped and catastrophized and was thinking how to get out of that, and that I would be dumpster diving to be making a living, to be able to live off the streets and keep my home. I mean, you think these things and you're like, no, that's not true. And change is hard for anybody. And ironically, for me as an autistic person, I've done quite well with the change, but um, it's that initial piece where it can be hard to understand, where you fall in that line. Where do you keep in that line of, where you need to be, and keep yourself regulated. And it's part of me having to find new ways and a new strategies to be able to cope with those challenges as those thoughts appear in my brain, even though they're not true, they're not part of who I am. And it's also understanding that things that you don't see and they're not tangible, because as autistic people we think literally a lot of times. The feelings that we feel, that people feel, even that we should feel, we have a hard time signifying those feelings, but we also have a hard time understanding them when people say things about us. For example, one of the biggest ones I was thinking in preparation for this vlog this week was the feeling of caring and appreciation. It's been through these last few days of self-care that I've really realized that, the feelings that you don't, people can say things and you don't, it's not something you feel until you really feel it and you really understand it. So like, let's take caring and appreciation, because they're two kind of similar things. And there are so many people that care and appreciate about me. Now that's like something that's not, you can't see, you can't literally see it, you can't literally feel it. I mean, unless you really can feel it and know how that is, unless you see it. And I think, for me, being able to feel it for once in as my time as an autistic adult in my late 30s is a big step. And understanding, how much people care and appreciate me, because for so long I didn't feel that way about myself. I was always negative. Everything was with me was always negative, and there was never anything positive. And it was always construing these negative thoughts and, not finding healthier ways to deal with them. I'm recognizing they're not valid, and they're just and what they are, but I've never been able to realize that I need to recognize them and see what they are before making a judgment about them and act. I know never to act on them, but just having that judgment and letting it alter my emotional state to a point that it gets very negative in nature. And I'm not saying things aren't always easy for people. And being autistic and having the challenges that I've had over the many years of my life, you know, that there are times when challenges happen. But right now in my mind, things are going pretty well. And, I'm taking care of myself, and there's great things happening. And, I don't think I've ever honestly felt as good as things. And, we go back, circle back to that paratransit change, going on to paratransit back in, in December when I did, and, realizing maybe that was a good thing. And, and maybe it was just the perfect time and the perfect divine intervention. But there's so much, you know, there was so much negative about the previous situation. And now I'm realizing the benefit of it, even though it's not perfect, but the benefits are definitely better about it. And, I think change is hard once you get used to things, but once you get used to things, you do pretty well at them. I think on my part, at least anyway. I feel that I do pretty well today about those things. And, but there's all this residue from the past, and it builds up because it's been constantly drilled in your head. And you're taught to believe things because as an autistic thinker, you're always thinking things in a different light, and you have a hard time understanding what people sometimes people say things and you don't see things from all sides or all values. And I think that was what estranged that whole situation for a very long time. But it was also realizing now that didn't even exist now. And a lot of that stuff that, we think about, we're not even really even involved in, or don't even have it to the scale that we have it to today, to understand that, we're humans. And it's just getting rid of all that negative residue, recognizing what I'm feeling is part of what autism is. And if I script it in my own home and when I can be genuinely myself, that's perfectly fine. But, recognizing too that these other emotions too, just being able to recognize and accept emotions for what they are. And that's a big step for me as an autistic person. I'm learning more about myself every day. And I think, you know, when I was just a little backstory, I think when I was first diagnosed 25 years ago, things weren't really as relevant as they are now. We have such technology, and we have such caring organizations around that support and advocate that allow us to learn new things about like different terminology and different things like that. So you're learning more about that, but then you're also realizing how to recognize emotions. Now, the next step for me is to learn how to better channel those emotions in other ways, just in the way of recognizing them and letting them go. Because if you let them go and you let them boil, then they're going to turn up really, really, it can really spiral out of control. And the thing now is I recognize them, but now I got to not only recognize them, but I got to um work better at managing them better. So yeah, but yeah, I just wanted to jump on here a few minutes this morning. I know I took some time to sleep yesterday. I was really work is busy, and took some days for some self-care this week. And I can't stress that enough, taking time for self-care. I try to take it in routine intervals if I can. I was blessed with the opportunity to take some time and do that and care for myself. Self-care is not selfish, people. It's a very good thing. But just realizing that I got to do that today, and today I'm going to spend some time with some family, and it's always good to have family in your life too. So, that being said, I'm gonna conclude the vlog podcast for today. Be sure to give us this a like, and if you like us, haven't subscribed already, please do so. Be sure to follow me on Pinterest, X, Instagram, and Facebook. That handle is Dustin's Dynasty. I'm on the web. That web address is www.dustinsdynastyusa.com. And I'm on Linktree. There's a handle on Linktree with all my relevant links. That is Dustin's Dynasty. I want to thank you again for listening. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.